Well, in the writing thing, we always talk about doors opening up, right? Some close, some open up. This was a door that opened up. I went through it, you know, and then another door opened up and I went through that one. And then finally the one with the Canadian government opened up and I went through that one. If
Right.
I was a Hollywood actor, you would say, "Oh, you were able to reinvent yourself, so many times being a horror writer and then a mystery writer and then this writing about truck driving and things." Yeah, well, through the whole thing, I was a professional writer.
Yeah.
Professional can write to specifications, deliver on time what somebody wants, and that's a talent in itself. And when you can do that, people like to work with you, right?
Edo, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
It's so great to catch up with you. It seems like ages we were hanging out at cons together and all those things. So
I remember there's a photo of us at one of the stores you managed, and there was a reading there, and I looked a lot younger and more handsome, and I think you had some hair. So yeah,
yeah,
it's been a while.
hair. I did have some hair back then. That was, I think, that was Campus Chills 2009. I think at the McMaster bookstore was that it?
No, I think it was before that. It might have been for something else. I know David Stogren was in the
Oh,
picture.
Chapters. That was Chapters.
Yeah, see
Ancaster.
how long ago that was.
1999, maybe
It could have been. It was a long
98,
time.
90. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a couple years ago. So and that was, I remember that was Sci-Fi Saturday. I had you and Rob Sawyer and David and Marcel Gagne and Sally, because they were editing Transversions magazine at the
Andrew
time.
Weiner was there too.
Fun times early
Oh,
on.
yeah.
So for listeners who aren't familiar, let's go back into your journey as a writer, where it all started for you way back when.
I started writing short stories, and like a guy called up to the major leagues and hits a home run on his first at bat. My first published short story was picked up by Carl Edward Wagner for Year's Best Horror Stories 20. So
Wow.
boom, right out of the block, I thought, I'm made for this. But, you know, after that, it still took a lot to tell stories. And I collected rejections. And, I had a box of rejection slips. I was getting rejected like 100 times a year,
Wow.
maybe one or two sales each of those following years. Managed to, keep writing short stories. I wrote a bunch of novels. None of them sold. For
Right.
anybody listening who is an aspiring writer, you think the first novel you write is going to sell. I wrote about 6 or 7 of them before I sold a novel, and I wrote a couple that didn't get sold till 25 years later. We can get to that in a
Wow.
bit. But so then my first novel was sold to Harper Prism. It was a gaming tie-in in the World of Darkness series called Wormwolf. That was the title of the book.
Right.
The gaming series was Werewolf the Apocalypse. So I did that, and that was a rush job. I did that in like 3 months because somebody dropped the ball that was in the queue. They wanted me to do it faster, so I did.
Wow.
Ended up on the Locust Gaming bestseller list, which was fun. Then I did a bunch of other gaming novels. Lord Soth for Wizards of the Coast, which
Right.
I didn't realize at the time was a really big deal. That character. Then I also did a book called Mr. Magic
Yes.
for Worlds of Darkness, but that got postponed. And also, I did a book called Army of the Dead for a Wizards of the Coast thing, or a TSR book called game called Dragon Dice, and that got canceled. So there was a rough
Wow.
patch there where I had 2 books come out, get canceled, not going to be in print. Um, Tumultuous times, and kept writing short stories though, and I did some short stories for the Hot Blood series. And that's
Yeah.
how I met my agent, Joshua Bilmus.
Yeah.
He was representing Jeff Gelb at the time. He read
Yeah.
my story in the one of the hot bloods. And he said, if you're not being represented, I wouldn't mind representing you. And I had a book called Teeth that I just finished. And I said, if you want to represent that book, I will let you represent me. And he read it and he agreed to it. So by that time, he negotiated the ends of the gaming tie-in books, but also started representing Teeth. And it took him about 5-6 years to actually sell it to Misha Merlin, which doesn't exist anymore. And we went on from there. I did a book for Design Image Group called Martyrs, and then managed to work my way up to doing mass market paperbacks for Pinnacle.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's where it stalled because the books didn't sell and we had kind of a setback of a few years and then the career path. And then I did young adult things and 2 anthologies for Tundra Books, Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. I proposed a 3rd one called Shit Your Pants, but they never went for it. So I ended up doing, at the suggestion of my wife, who was a children's librarian at the time, said, you should do some young adult novels. So I did, Wolfpack being the one. And it happened, award winner, Silver Birch, Aurora, did some other books. And those books trailed off. The sales weren't there. And, you know, so up and down, roller coaster of a writing career. I'm sure it's not unlike anyone else's. There's some success, but very hard to sustain that success right when you get to that level.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Scream Queen was one of your mass market paperbacks. And then there was another vampire novel, I remember, right?
Scream Queen and Blood Road were the
Blood
2
Road,
books.
exactly. The trucker vampire, right?
Yes. And both those books were optioned for film, like fantastic, 18 months options, which just lapsed.
Yeah.
And because the sales were kind of not as good as Pinnacle had hoped, they suggested I do a traditional horror novel, perhaps set in Maine with ghosts. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't do that stuff. I was all ready to do a sequel to Scream Queen called Screenplay, where, I don't know if anyone's read it, doesn't mean anything to you, where the judge is, the producers of the series are being sued, and the judge says, okay, well, let's spend a night in the house to see if it's really haunted. And it just goes from there.
Right.
But no, they wanted me to do like something like can't you do something like Stephen King? Which reminds me of, you know, you'd be at a party and people say, oh, you're a writer. You know what you should write? You should write a bestseller. Oh, what an idea. Yeah, I never thought of that. I should write a best-selling book, a book that sells 1 million copies. Thank you.
Yeah, come on. Why haven't you done that?
Come on. So I was just like, you know, and I did a bunch of proposals. I did about 3 or 4 proposals.
Right.
And none of them stuck. And, you know, so it went from there.
So basically, your wife was working as a librarian and she had suggested to go into YA. And so then Wolfpack was published by a Canadian publisher. How did that
Tundra Books. Yes. Tundra Books was, I don't know if it is still in, I think it's still around. They were the young adult arm of McClellan and Stewart. So like, you know, really a real publisher with lots of juice. And I sold the book or proposed the book over the phone just by outlining the prologue of the book, which is just the scene in the fire where the park ranger comes across the wolf cubs after the fire. And she said, yeah, write it up and present it. And we sold it as a proposal. And I'm the kind of guy pragmatic, and I'm always trying to sell more books. So I always like cut $1,000 off their offer and said, how about that much for 2? And they said, yes. So, you know, I prolonged my career by another book or so, a couple of times. And the book came out. Silver Birch did a huge favor for the book because to be on the Silver Birch ballot, first of all, you need 5,000 copies in print. But it immediately went into a second printing to reach that plateau. And what happens with Silver Birch is they pick 10 books to be on the list, and for kids to vote on their favorite book, they have to read at least 5 of them, something like that. And it was a runaway hit and a winner by a large margin that year, and that was great. Ended up selling 10,000 copies.
Which is fantastic.
But yeah, that's great. And then the second book came out, and the third and the fourth, and they all did about 1,000 copies each because they didn't have that boost. And you know, they moved on to Silver Birch. We got new. I was hoping that the second book would become a finalist too, but you know, and that's just up and down of this, the writing life, success followed by a middling success, or even classify it as a failure, and then you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it all over again. So I'm content with the career I had and everything that I've done, so no regrets.
And interestingly enough, so for people who aren't familiar with it, the Silver Birch is it an Ontario or Canadian award for young adults?
All across Ontario. So it's part of the Forest of Reading program, which they have a book class, an award for each kind of grade. So mine, Silver Birch, was the original one. And that was for grades, I think, 5 and 6. And they have, you know, different categories now. I don't know if they still do or don't, but just in Ontario, everybody in Ontario, public schools or any kind of schools, get to vote on it. And the greatest part of it was the awards presentation down by the lake at Ontario Place. They bussed in school kids from all over. They had all the finalists on the screen, on the stage, and they announce you, and all the kids are there holding their book up, your book, screaming, and you walk out on stage, and I swear to God, it must be like what it feels like to be a rock star, because I'm like, holy, this is just the best thing ever.
Wow.
And so it was the greatest moment of my writing career up until this year, which is for the past year, that's been filled with moments just to be savored.
Well, before we get there, because I'm really excited about that, because this.
Yeah, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Sure. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay, because I remember when you won the Bram Stoker Award prior to the Silver Birch Award for, was it a short story
called Rat Food?
Yeah, Rat Food, that you had co-authored. And I remember you won the Stoker Award, which is a big deal. Way back when.
Yeah, very big deal. We were in New York City for that. Dave Nickel, I wrote it with, and I'll just background on how that came about. He had got me to fill in for a woman on maternity leave at his newspaper, the North York Mirror.
Yeah.
So I was working there, he was working there, and we were in the same writers group, the Cecil Street Irregulars. And I was talking to him about a new story I was trying to write. So I had all this premise about this old woman who fed the rats in her house so they didn't come, you know, at the wrong times, and she could, you know, be friendly to them. And I had an ending, and Dave said, no, you know what should happen? It should happen like this. And I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. So we started writing it. And this was before emails and, you know, all of that, everyone being on MS Word or conversion things or anything.
Yeah.
We had a hell of a time, because I was working, I think, on WordStar, thanks to Rob Sawyer. He convinced me to do that. It was a terrific program for writing books and writers in general. And Dave was on MS Word, and so we had a hard time merging the two. We had to get together physically. We had to do all kinds of stuff. And we submitted it to J.N. Williamson. Jerry Williamson did a series called Masks. And we submitted to his anthology, and he didn't do one after that, but he provided us about 3 or 4 pages of notes on how we could make it better. And we took it all to heart, and we used just about every one of his suggestions. And then, for lack of a place to submit it to, you know, it sounds surprising. Back in the day, there wasn't enough places or a good place. We sent it to On Spec, and they published it. And it was kind of to our advantage too, because because it was in a Canadian publication, it gave us a legitimate excuse to send a copy to every member of HWA, the Horror Writers Association,
Right.
so they could read it and vote on it if they felt so inclined. And that put a copy of the story in everyone's hands. So that was a bonus.
Right.
And we ended up winning. So, the investment in the postage and the printing and everything was worthwhile. And that's how that came about. It was a great little statue. I don't have it within arm's reach here, but it's just over there. And terrific statuette, and a great moment too in life, sure.
Yeah, and I mean I'm gonna go back to, I remember your book launch for, because we're gonna get to an event in your hometown soon, but I went to a book launch for Death Drives a Semi, which was a collection of your previously published stories, including Rat Food, and
Right.
and when I think about the cover image of Death Drives a Semi and the title story, and I think about, there's another awesome trucker story of the trucker going over ice. Over a lake.
Ice Bridge,
And
yeah.
I still remember your live readings of that story was just so dynamic. And then you had Blood Road as well, because you went on, when you ended up sort of taking a departure from speculative fiction, from horror, you continued that theme of truck driving, right?
Yeah, well, there's an interesting story. This is good that it's a podcast and you're not constrained by time, because I have an interesting story how that came about.
I'd love that. Yeah.
When Death Drives a Semi was published, I was looking for places to promote it, and I picked up this copy of Truck News, like Truck News magazine. Death Drives a Semi. There's three
Yeah.
stories in there with truck drivers in it, and so I'm looking through the staff box, and it was edited by John G. Smith. I went, holy cow! He was a reporter at the Brampton Times when I was a sports reporter there, and now he's editing this magazine. Like, this is amazing. So I sent him all the stuff, and I sent him a copy of the book. And he was toying with an idea of reprinting one of the truck driving stories in there, and then he was thinking just having a blurb promoting it. And then he asks me, he says, these truck driving stories, they're not trucking industry positive. Maybe you could write some stories that are trucking industry positive, and we could publish them in our truck news. And I'm thinking, when an opportunity like that comes along, you can't do anything but accept it. So I ended up
Right.
writing about Mark Dalton, owner operator. He was a former private investigator. He's on a case, and he finds out that his wife in bed with another woman, and he says, "To hell with this! I'm selling everything I have, buying a truck, and hitting the open road." And he can't keep his nose out of other people's business, so he lives in his truck, and every 3 or 4 chapters or 3 or 4 months, one story ends, another story begins, and it went that way for 15 years. I
Wow.
was continuously in the magazine for 15 years. I'm certain it was the longest ever serial story in Canadian publication
Wow.
history. I'm sure of that. If anyone has a better, more longer one, I'd like to know about it. And I won one of the stories, won a Tuna Award, was Truck Writers of North America Award. They gave it for a fiction story. And in the end, I had a sponsor, Michelin Tires. In the end, they asked if I could do another story featuring a new to the country driver, and this one would be graphic, more pictures than copy. And I said, of course. And so I would write an outline with some paragraphs and some dialogue, and I would tell the artist, his name escapes me now, I apologize to him for it, because he did a fantastic job over the course of the time. He also did the artwork for the Dalton stories as they appeared in the magazine too. So
Oh,
it was
okay.
a boon for him. And I would say, a picture here of this, this, and this. And he would do them all up. And for about 3 years, I was doing both the Dalton stories in print and the graphic stories with the help of the artist. And it only ended a few years ago when the magazine ceased print publication and just went online. But
Right.
what a run. And from there, I'm sorry if I continue,
No, keep going.
Too long on this because, yeah, it's a fascinating story. From there, we managed to sell 2 audiobooks to Graphic Audio. They did 9 and 10 stories, I think, around the first 20 stories in 2 audiobook editions.
Right.
Mark Belton, owner operator. And also, I was contacted by a woman from Natural Resources Canada who thought the stories were great, and it was, very popular in the magazine. And she asked me if I could take a one-day workshop for truck drivers about fuel-efficient driving practices and write a novel that went from coast to coast that incorporated all of the information from the one-day workshop, put it in a novel. And that way, drivers didn't have to take a day off the road to sit in a classroom to get all the information.
Wow.
They could read the book while they're on the road, with reference to at the back about the things and where to find them in the book. And so I did that, and they distributed it for free. And I went to BC and New Brunswick and Alberta and Quebec, signing free copies of the book. Like, how good is that?
That's amazing.
They did it in French and English and audiobooks, and they gave them away free. Truck driving schools picked up the book and put it in their curriculum to teach their new drivers driving, fuel-efficient driving practices. And from there, I did 2 more. One to teach drivers about going in the United States, which admittedly it wasn't all that good because they didn't help me get all the information. But the third one, they wanted to go on the ice roads in northern Canada, which was great. And they sent me to Yellowknife, and I actually went on the ice roads and talked to a bunch of people up there. And it's the funniest thing because fuel efficient driving in the ice roads is non-existent. They turn their trucks on in December, and they basically leave them running continuously until March or so. Because if you shut your truck off and it freezes, it is a long process to get it back on the road.
Wow.
But they do use auxiliary heaters and things like that.
Right.
And they plug in their trucks and things like that. But as exciting as driving on the ice roads is boring as hell. You have to stay to 30 kilometers an hour, and you have to space yourself. You can't go further than that. And the most dangerous thing about it is falling asleep behind the wheel, because drivers are up there for a short amount of time trying to get in the most runs as they can.
Yeah.
Sleep is at a premium, and sometimes they don't get enough. There's no danger of falling through the ice, which they portray on the television series. And as a matter of fact, the ice road I was on the first series of ice road truckers, and the owners of the road said, "You guys are making us look to be like mavericks and careless drivers." They said, "You can't come on our ice road anymore."
Wow.
Because the only time a vehicle ever went through the ice was at the end or the beginning of the season. There was 2.
Right.
They were both maintenance vehicles.
Yeah.
Nobody was on the ice when it was sketchy and you couldn't fall through. So anyway, all of that stemming from me saying yes to Truck News Magazine. Sure, I'll write stories for it. I did 55 stories, 2 audiobooks, 3 novels published by the Canadian government. What other writer can say that? I don't think any can.
No.
So, yeah, what a ride.
Speaking of ride, I just want to confirm for people who aren't familiar with the term ice roads. You're not talking about a road. You're not talking about a road on a regular highway that's just covered in ice. You're talking about going across
ice. Yes, frozen ice, and they drive across it in the winter, and they do that for about 6 weeks. That the ice is thick enough, and this is to act in Northwest Territories, access all the diamond mines north of Yellowknife.
So across huge bodies of water.
Yes.
Which
is,
wow.
There's 2 of them. One was just across the river there outside of Yellowknife. We stopped on it, looked down, and it's clear ice, black. The horror writer in me was figuring, I'm going to see somebody looking up from the below. Like, oh my God, it's that's scary. It looks terrifying. And the ice roads, they go north, driving across lakes, and, there's a couple of connecting small roads, short distances, but it is a road over frozen lakes, and it was quite the experience. And there's checkpoints and everything, and safety first before anything, and
of course,
attention to the environment.
Yeah.
If you spill fuel, the company responsible has to clean it up within hours. It is like
Right.
the environment is pristine and it's kept that way, and it's very fascinating. And I wrote a novel about it. Grateful, and I never would have gone up to
Fantastic.
Northwest Yellowknife on my own. So it was a
Yeah, no
terrific
kidding.
experience.
And it's kind of funny because as I look at that, you're seeing like there were some challenges with Pinnacle and all the other stuff. It's like, well, it didn't sell as many as we thought, so you moved on, and you just kept readapting. It sounds like you follow the, Kevin J. Anderson has the popcorn theory of success that says someone asked me to write a story for their magazine that they were going to pay me for. I did, okay, I'll give it a shot. Why not, right?
Well, in the writing thing, we always talk about doors opening up, right? Some close, some open up. This was a door that opened up. I went through it, and then another door opened up, and I went through that one. And then finally, the one with the Canadian government opened up, and I went through that one. If
Right.
I was a Hollywood actor, you would say, "Oh, you were able to reinvent yourself, so many times, being a horror writer, and then a mystery writer, and then this writing about truck driving and things." Yeah, well, through the whole thing, I was a professional writer.
Yeah.
Professional can write to specifications, deliver on time what somebody wants, and that's a talent in itself. And when you can do that, people like to work with you, right? I
Yeah.
never missed a deadline with Truck News magazine. They always got it early, and they laid out the pages, and they never had to worry or pester me for it. And
Right.
that there's value to that. It's not just about coming up with a great idea, but delivering a usable product on time every time. And I did that for 15 years. So
Wow.
something to that too.
And then while you're working away doing the stuff and also working other roles, something happened that I'm excited to talk to you about, because you just got back from LA because of this something. You talk a little bit about this Wolfpack series. What happened?
Okay.
How did this come about?
Well, I have done a whole structured talk on this, and I'll give you in the quick Cole's Notes version. And for anybody watching who's not in the United States, Cole's Notes used to be the Cliff Notes of Canada, so you can understand Cliff Notes, Cole's Notes. Wolfpack came out in 2004. There was interest at the time from somebody from the Survivor series, an associate producer. There was somebody interested who had a development deal with Paramount Pictures. Fantastic. But once those initial contacts were made, there was nothing.
Right.
Nothing whatsoever. Won the awards. We did the 3 other books. And then by 2008, the series was basically out of print. And, okay, we did our thing. It was a moderate success, and forgot all about it, got on to other things, doing the Mark Dalton series and other things. And then a year and a half ago, my agent, it was on a Friday, I remember, I was sitting in the kitchen. My wife was making dinner. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and I got an email from my agent saying, "Oh, someone's interested in the television film rights for Wolfpack." Okay. Do they even know that it's out of print? Like, who are these guys? Like, okay, we'll entertain this. So we got negotiating, and it wasn't a lot of negotiating, but we asked for things, and they said no. And in the end, it was funny. We almost said, "Well, to hell with this, forget it." But then it was like, well, okay, we'll take their money for the option, and that'll be fine. So we did, and didn't think a thing about it, because this has happened before. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, a year, 6 months later, the teaser trailer comes out. Said coming into 2022 from Jeff Davis, Teen Wolf the movie. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then there was a pause, and then it was like, also coming in 2022, Wolfpack. And on the screen, there's my name based on the acclaimed series by Edo van Belkom. I'm like, holy shit, are you kidding me? And I was off work that day when it came out, and I watched that teaser trailer like for 3 hours, and every time I watched it, my name was still there. And like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And from there, yeah, that was in January. So it was a year since we kind of sign.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, they started filming. And like, are you kidding me? This never happens. And they started filming in July in Atlanta, and they filmed all the way to November. And we got invited down in October to the set. We spent 3 days on the set, so which is like another bizarre experience. You're watching this, like none of the scenes they were filming at the time were in my book, which
Right.
is understandable, the suspension and everything, but still to walk around and everything's branded Wolfpack, this, that, and the other thing, and like, oh my God, it's like for real. I can't believe this. And at the time, I did spend time with Jeff Davis, the showrunner and creator. And it's every time I meet him, it's like for 5 minutes because he's always busy doing something else.
Right.
So I did ask him, I said, how did that come about? Like, I saw an interview where you said someone at Paramount gave you the book to read. And he said, yes, someone asked me if I wanted to do Supernatural series again. He said, okay. And he said, how about this? And he'd be like, oh my God, teenage werewolves again. But he read it and something, rang true to him or clicked with him about the series. And he said yes to it. And at the time, the person at Paramount said, we own the rights to this. And I said to him, no, they did not. And he laughed and said, it's typical how Hollywood works. And, cryptically looking back at some emails from my agent, he said, I've never had someone turn around in a one business day on something that I emailed them about on negotiating an option. He says, there might be something up. And of course there was. We didn't know anything about it, but Paramount had already sold it to Jeff and they had to get the rights pronto. So we had leverage and we didn't even know it. But I'm not bitter. That's the way things work. That's the way Hollywood works. When Robert Bloch sold Psycho to a small television production company, they didn't tell him that small production company was owned by Alfred Hitchcock, and it's the same production company that did Alfred Hitchcock Presents. So, this kind of deception is, been going on in Hollywood for 60 years.
Yeah.
So I can't be too upset. But yeah, we just got back from Los Angeles last Thursday. We were there for the premiere at a theater, and thanks to Jeff Davis, we got our accommodation and flight paid for, and it was a surreal experience. I stepped out on the red carpet with my wife, and all these photographers are there. Edo, look over here. Edo, over here. Edo. Like, which way do I look? I don't know. And then afterwards, you're not a cast member or a star. Please move along, sir. That kind of thing. So I had my moment, and we sat in the theater and saw the premiere episode. And I'm happy to say that my credit, which has to be on the screen for by itself, usually would be put at the end of the episode. It's in the opening credits. And when I said to Jeff Davis, I said, thank you so much for that. He said, nope, every episode. So I'm grateful to that. He didn't have to do that, but he did it because he felt, that it was worthy and deserving. So I'm happy for that, and it's going to be on all 8 episodes. Hopefully, it goes into season 2. He said that the people at Paramount told me to start writing, but that's not very official, right? We have to see numbers and things like that. So who knows? Season 2. Jeff says, I think it's going to go 8 seasons. Well, that's amazing, Jeff. Thank you. I appreciate that, but we'll just see. But for now, it's like, I've said this to many people, it's like getting struck by lightning and winning the lottery all in the same day. And I'm riding this and enjoying every moment of it I can. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's still not over. We still have the premiere January 26th on Paramount Plus, and then we're doing a hometown screening February 5th here in Brampton. So there's still a little bit more to go.
Right.
And just today, there was an offer for Arabic rights to the first novel, Wolfpack. So it'll be published in Saudi Arabia. So this is the trickle down effect, and it's still trickling along, and I'm grateful for every bit of it.
Oh, that is so exciting. I am so thrilled that I get to bring my son to the premiere in Brampton, because not
Yeah,
the LA one that you've already been at, but the local hometown celebration of one you're doing at the theater there, right?
you mentioned before you were at the release and the theater for Death Drives a Semi. It's the very same theater,
Oh my God, that's awesome.
but that time we got it almost for nothing, and people came for free.
Yeah,
Now we had to rent it, and there we
of
had to
course.
pay for technicians and house managers and things, and that's why there's costs involved. But
Yeah,
that proceeds are going to wildlife sanctuaries that we're supporting in
perfect.
continuation with the theme of the books.
Right.
And but I'll just say a little bit about it. We've got Rob Sawyer is going to introduce me, my good friend, science fiction writer. We've got some clips from the wildlife sanctuaries, some behind the scenes stuff, like when people are finding their seats, there'll be a slideshow that goes from the print of the book to the
Oh,
premiere in Los Angeles, accompanied by werewolf and wolf themed music. And I'll be doing the reading of the first prologue that sets up the whole series,
right.
and then a couple of surprises, and then we'll show the actual premiere episode. And then I'll come back and I'll explain how it went from print to screen, and
Awesome.
then answer any questions from the audience. And hopefully we'll have some books for sale. I don't know. That's the iffiest thing right now.
Yeah.
But we've got some posters there. There's going to be posters and all kinds of value added stuff. So not looking to make money at this, but just enjoying it and having people and
Right.
friends come in and celebrate this whole thing with me. And that's the purpose of it. So
That
I'm
is
excited.
fantastic. No, I'm so looking forward to that, and I'm so thrilled that the books are going to be available. So there's an audio book available, ebook available, and ideally, hopefully, print soon available, right?
It's going to be close. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's going to be up to the day of. We'll see. Hopefully there is some.
And we didn't mention this one thing, but there's I mean, among the prestigious actors who are engaged in this process, there's probably one who's known to people who like paranormal audiences. What's I can't remember this unknown
Her
actress's
initials,
name.
her initials are SMG, and she's also goes by Mother, Buffy, like that. Yeah, Sarah Michelle Gellar, which
Wow.
um, yeah, everyone involved is surprised and grateful that she signed on to it. Jeff Davis didn't think she would, and then they offered it to her, and she read the script. And this is all what I've heard.
Yeah.
So she agreed to do it because of some of the themes that they're going to be taking on, and she wants to be like a mentor to some of the younger actors on the
Awesome.
series, which is great. So she does get an executive producer credit, and I think her input on the set and with the young actors and the cachet that she brings. I didn't think it would be a real thing, but after she signed on, to see all the places where her name was mentioned and her picture was, and signed on, knew this and that, and every one of those places, my name was added on there based on the book series by Edo van Belkom. I don't think anybody who wrote any of those articles knew anything about the series, but whatever Paramount told them, it was based on the book series. It got mentioned there. So
Awesome.
I'm grateful for that. And it's all part of the ride. And, you know, she's a star and she adds gravitas to the series, and it gets mentioned and is being looked at in ways that it wouldn't without her participation. So, I'm grateful for that, and I'm just happy that she would be involved. And if you watch the first two episodes, her role is slightly smaller than you would expect.
Right.
But as the series goes on, her role is going to be expanded. And if
Of course.
there's a series, season 2, season 3, she is going to be front and center in the entire storylines. That's
Right.
no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and I think you pick up on that from the trailers that I've seen as well. So wow, I cannot wait. I'm so looking forward to this. And I think tickets. This is episode's gonna go up before your Brampton launch. So tickets are still available.
Oh yeah, tickets. You know, if you ever want to, like I remember Ray Bradbury saying, he kept himself humble by keeping a drawer at his writing desk full of unsold tickets to one of his plays.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to put on a performance and a show and charge people money for it, it's a humbling experience because I signed up to get notifications every day from the box office on what's been sold, and it's like it can be soul crushing, but we're slowly and steadily selling more tickets. The availability is good now. I don't know what it needs to get to be limited, but we're working towards that. 2 weeks to go, and it's fun to look and say, "Oh, this sold." And people say, I bought a ticket," and I'm like, "Oh, so you're the one? Okay, I know that you're the one who bought it yesterday," something like that. But yeah, tickets are still available. I'm sure they're going to be available right up to the day of.
Awesome.
And which is fine. I mean, right now it's a good enough crowd. It's going to look like there's people there, and there's still people coming. So I'm looking forward to that. And yes, tickets are still available.
And given your history as a writer, I'm sure you're familiar with the times where, as an author, when you're doing a book signing, it's just apart from the people on stage, there's not as many people in the audience sometimes too, right?
I have absolutely forbidden myself to do any book signings. I will not do anymore.
Wow.
I know you. I know you manage a bookstore and you organize book signings, but when you're doing them by yourself, and they can be soul crushing.
Yeah.
You're sitting there. People don't want to look you in the eye. They'll look at you and say, "Where's the bathroom?" And you say, "Over there." Or I actually did a reading at a bookstore where I was doing my stuff, reading, and somebody complained to the bookstore manager that there was a man making a lot of noise, interrupting their experience at the bookstore. And I'm like, holy cow. And all of that is true. So, bookstore signings, unless, they've got a million copies for me to sign and they guarantee that every one of them is going to be sold, not sent back to the publisher, I'll do them. So
Oh my
I've
God.
had my time. I've done it. It's not like I'm averse to it, but I know what they entail.
Yeah.
And if I can help it at this point in my life to not have that grief and not have my soul crushed by someone who's looking for the bathroom, I'm going to do that. So.
Well, Edo, I am so thrilled and so happy to see this wonderful success because you are among the best writers I have ever enjoyed in my life, and I love your stuff. I'm so glad that stuff that you've created has been adapted into a media that so many other people can enjoy. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you very much. Jeff Davis told me, he said, "Oh, we're going to sell a lot of your books," and I'm like, the guy who's been through it all is skeptical and say, "Okay, well, let's see, we'll see." But even if we don't, this has been a great ride, and I'm having a blast. And when can you take your wife to LA and say, "Come on the red carpet with me"? So
Yeah, no kidding. Where can my listeners find out more about you online?
well, you can follow me on Facebook. I'm there. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. And I'm going to be more on TikTok. I'm still learning that. Like I'm 60 years old, so I'm learning all of this stuff.
Awesome.
Half the time I'm looking at my phone, like, where did that thing go? I just saw it there. Which one was it on? On TikTok, I want to do something called Wolfpack Facts, where I do like a 30-second video comparing the book to the show, or talking about horror in general. Inspired by my good friend Robert Sawyer, who's done a bunch of TikTok videos now, and I find them very interesting, and hopefully I can replicate that
Yeah.
with stuff in my writing career. And if you're looking for other books, you can go to, I use my author page with Jabberwocky Literary Agency. Go to the agency there, go to the author section, click on my name. And, while you're at it, there's a bunch of other really great authors there that he represents. Brandon Sanderson and Charlene Harris, to name
Never heard
two.
of either one of them.
Tanya Huff, great writers.
Yeah.
And you could spend the day just looking through all that. So that's what I use for a web page these days. Social media, if you can't find me, you're not looking hard enough. And so I'm trying to put myself out there, and I'm on podcasts like this. And
Awesome.
I must say, this one was great. I know you're knowledgeable and you're aware of my career, so this has been a lot more fun than some. So I appreciate you
Awesome.
having me on.
Edo, thanks again so much for just a reminder that there will be links to all those things you mentioned in the show notes at starkreflections.ca. Edo, thanks again for hanging out with me today.
Thanks, Mark. It was a great time. Thank you very much.